Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. Today, it is myself, and I, Joe Sangle, that's hosting it. Megan is not going to be a part of this one today because it is going to be an excellent podcast episode where we interview a success story. And today's guest is someone who I've known for more than a decade. I've observed him and his family from both near and afar as they have progressed through their money journey. And I'm excited to have him share his story and, more importantly, the lessons he's learned along the way. My friend's name is Pastor Marty Schmidt. He's the founding pastor of the Bridge Church based in Ottumwa, Iowa. And they held their first service on September 9th, 2007, right before the economy collapsed. And the church has witnessed incredible growth ever since. Now with 2 additional campuses, one in downtown Ottumwa and the other in Centerville, Iowa, more than 1,500 people call the Bridge Church home. His bride is Jenny, who's an amazing artist, entrepreneur, mother, and wife. And they've welcomed 4 children, a son and 3 daughters, to their household. I'm excited to welcome pastor, leader, husband, father, entrepreneur, starter, grower, and best of all, my friend to the podcast. Welcome, Marty, to the Monday Money Tip Podcast.
I am so honored, excited. I listened to this. I feel like I could contribute today, but I am proud to call you a friend. Let's go. This is awesome.
It's awesome. I love being able to hang out with you, and I can't not wait for those who listen to Monday Money Tip Podcast to catch up with you and learn from you. I think this is just going to be the start. And the beautiful part about you being a preacher is a bunch of your messages are available online and people can go access them. We'll talk about what that website is at the end. But I as a way of context of starting out this episode on this Monday morning as people are driving to work or starting out a week, I remember being able to serve you early on in the very start of what was known as I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. I flew out in January of 2009. I landed in Des Moines, and you probably remember what I was wearing.
Oh, man. It's Iowa. So we had snow on the ground, and boy, you come off that plane wearing Crocs, I believe.
Crocs. I had some Crocs on. I'll never forget it. Living in South Carolina, I'm a kid from the Midwest, but you kind of forget that the Midwest has snow. And I remember descending out of the cloud cover and the final couple thousand feet, and I'm like, it's really white. And we landed, and I'm walking in 8 inches of snow, and I'm walking in Crocs out to the car rental place there in Des Moines, Iowa. I drove down and met with you with different shoes on, and I met with you and Jenny at your home, and you had just 3 children then. And me and my bride, we're in the midst of an IVF infertility journey, and we're praying for a second child. And I remember coming and meeting with you, and we were there to talk about your own personal finances. You had invited me to the house, and your lovely bride there has got 3 really young children. I mean, this is 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what their ages were, but they were little. Mine was little.
3 and under, yeah.
And you invited me to come talk about your finances in your house. Now, that's a bold step to ask someone like me, who you'd only briefly met and talked to a couple times on the phone, to have me come help you with something so personal as your money. So I want to just start, because so many people who listen to the podcast, so many people who need to listen to the podcast, they won't take that step. It's the most important step, which is asking for help, seeking wisdom. What allowed you to be able to take that step? What compelled you to do it?
I mean, that's really accurate. I did not know you, but I knew what my situation was. And for Jenny, the church plant was going well, but the personal finances were not. And I honestly operated with a budgeting principle of return the first 10%, God will take care of the rest. And yet every month, like, I'm looking, and we've got massive student debt loan. We just had our 3rd child. Like, I'm making these budgets on a spreadsheet, and it's never adding up. And like, somehow we keep going backwards. And it was one of these things where I'm just like, I don't know how to do this. And every time I felt like, okay, Jenny, this is the month, we'd have a whammy. Do you remember Press Your Luck?
Like, they've got it on TV again. Have you seen it?
No,
back on TV on one of the big networks. We've been
no
watching.
no whammies. Stop.
No whammies. Stop.
And every month I'd hit one. I mean, it was just one of these like this. And I mean, it was.
And for those who are not familiar with the show, press your luck. When you get a whammy, tell everybody what happens to the contestant. They go back to zero. So what Marty is describing here is he was getting whammies and every month going back to zero. And that's a terrible feeling, isn't it?
Oh, it was the worst. And I think here was the thing. I was starting to move to a mindset and ache of, is this how it's always going to be? I did not know anyone who went from nothing to something. And I knew I had nothing except debt. And enter you. And through our couple of conversations, you led with, I was broke, now I'm not. And I'm like, this is new. This could be, and I didn't want another gimmick. I just wanted someone who's like, I've done it. I think I can show you how. I've won. And so one of the things I just remember, I'm like, so we tithe, and you're like, well, you don't have to be stupid with the other 90%. Like, we can kind of talk. And one of the very first principles you brought up was you exposed one of my whammies. One of my whammies was, I didn't know anything about this thing called budget billing. And so in those cold months, all of a sudden a utility bill would throw off the entire budget we had made because we made it during a non-high cold time. And so for Jenny and I, it was just really crucial for us to go, you probably have seen things we haven't. And I think that's the advice I would give to someone is, someone can look at your money and see things that you don't see, or they've seen other things that you haven't seen. And that wisdom can propel you forward. And that's exactly what happened for us.
Yeah. One of my favorite verses that I share, there's two of them in Proverbs that go with what you're saying. And that's Proverbs 15:22 that says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So that you were seeking counsel. But Proverbs 4:7 adds to it. It says the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. That's like no duh. But then he adds that unbelievable last part of that. It says the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding.
Yeah.
And that's why you had student loan debt. You had paid for some understanding. But for some reason, people won't pay for it for personal financial help. It's just the weirdest thing ever. The thing that could help them fund it all is where they don't want to seek help. So tell me, I think it's helpful for people to hear about the conversation that a husband and wife has before they're bringing some, you're probably perceiving me at some level as a financial expert, guru, somebody who's been there, done that, and has something to offer. How do you have that conversation about, hey, how are we going to bring this up? Who's going to talk about what?
Yeah. And I think, my wife and I, we actually have a pretty good communication. I mean, that's part of it. We've moved to our roles within the finances, and I think every couple needs to kind of figure out who's primary in the entering and things like that, but it's mutually shared. And so what we had been in, it was just kind of like, we talked about it once in a while. And I think it was this, one of the things that sparked it for us is that I said, I feel like I'm supposed to talk to our church about money, but I don't think we know what we're doing. I think we need help. And so it was, now how about this? I also had asked a friend who you were, and I said, don't just trust anyone who says they have wisdom about money, because that could be a scheme that you don't want, and so there was a little bit of recon here, but would you be comfortable if we asked this guy? And I think there's a little bit of benefit from getting someone who someone knows, but you don't. There's a little bit of an advantage in building that friendship that way. Because people get pretty insecure about I don't want people to know how much I make, or I'm embarrassed about how much. I'm pretty transparent. And so for us, it was a little bit of just hey, we'll try it. I mean, we were in that spot. Let's try it. And so.
And I remember tell me what we did that day. I remember preparing a budget, talking about details.
Yeah. So we sat at my dining room table with, my little squirrels running around, and I kind of showed you 3 different budgets that had different realities. And you're like, okay, let's start over. I've got a tool. And I remember us just sitting down And on my computer, you downloaded like the budget that's on your wildly famous website. And out of that, we just started plugging away. And you would always, is that a need? Like, could that change? Have you looked into, and then through all of that, all of a sudden you said, well, here's what I'm noticing. There's known upcoming expenses. And I think that was the second huge light bulb for my wife and I, was that whole concept of there are annual expenses that pop up that we can know about, but we aren't prepared for it. And if we could get in the rhythm of setting some funds aside for the preparation of when that expense does show up, because we know that car that we have is not going to keep on running. Like, we are ready for that auto bill. So that was the big revelation as we went through our budget and said, you can't move that. That's like, literally, you have to pay for your mortgage, and those kind of things. But then we really moved into, okay, so how do we spend the savings? I don't know if that was your exact wording, but like this whole idea of, I thought we saved what was left, and you kind of elevated that. And I mean, again, brand new. And I think people who regularly listen to this would be like, well, that doesn't seem new, but like it was new for me. And I just think there's all these small tips that put my wife and I into like, oh, light bulb. What do we do with the other 90%? And we came up with a plan.
Well, I think what's interesting that you're sharing is we do prioritize saving. We in fact, GSI, PTR, give, save, invest, plan the rest, the 4 things you can do with money. It's second, savings is. Yeah. But both of the things you mentioned, going on the budget billing, or what is also known as equal billing, where your utility, whether it's natural gas, whether it's oil delivery, whether it's electricity, water, sewer, they will equal bill you every single month, and you'll run a little debit or credit balance. But it's really good for people with fixed incomes or those who don't like big changes in the bill.
Who don't want a whammy.
It's huge. They don't want a whammy. And the second thing you're mentioning is saving for known upcoming but non-monthly expenses. And I totally agree. Short of putting money in savings and preparing a monthly budget, saving for known upcoming expenses is what most wildly affected and improved my financial picture. But what I wanted to say about it is, when you have a predictable utility bill, now it's the same number, you can set it and forget it and automate it. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens for your known upcoming expenses. By smoothing it, you can set it and forget it. And the whole key about winning with money is to take out complexity. Just make it easy. And so, one of the things that I noticed is, you're a pastor, but you started a church. Yeah. So people who plant churches, they're entrepreneurial, they're risk takers. Just like a person who's starting a business from scratch, there's a lot of risk, and you're doing it with a young family and a growing family. And along the way, you recognize that planning a church is definitely different than planning a business, starting a business. But there are some similarities from the financial standpoint, because they both have a lot of financial uncertainty. So how did you navigate having this conversation with Jenny saying, hey, I really feel like God is saying, start this church. You feel it too. That could have some challenges for income. It could have challenges for growth in income. It's not guaranteed to work. We're not guaranteed to get our old job back if it doesn't work. We're kind of burning the ships here. Yeah. How did you navigate that?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right with your description of all of the risk factors. And I think you're dancing both risk and margin in entrepreneurship, right? Like, you have to take risk, but if you over risk and expose margin to a level of like unbearable when the risk might fail, like, what is that? And so I think there's that teeter-totter. I'm trying to figure out, like, can our margin handle this bold risk? Now, from my standpoint, it had more to do with the network of other people around us. We didn't have a plan B, but we knew people just in case we needed one. But I think if I were to give Pastor Marty advice for 15 years ago, I would kind of tie into a couple of things. learn from those who've already done it, right? Like I did a little bit of that, but getting wisdom from other church plants. So if I'm starting a brand new restaurant, I want to know from a successful restaurant that's recently started, what did they spend money on? What did they not spend money on? Where were they surprised? Because it's unbelievable. This comes back to that principle we've already targeted: get wisdom, whatever you can do, get understanding, right? And so for me, then the other thing was year one was really learning, how do we do this? And you're just going to make mistakes. And so I needed enough margin in my up front to be able to weigh the risk that didn't work out, right? The second year was really about relationships then. Now that we're learning what we are, we're also learning who we're doing it with. And enter you. You came in and helped guide the relationship of financial management, both as an organization, me personally, but then you also trained so many people on a weekend experience and let them come in. And that actually was a business principle for the bridge. Even though we are a church, there's this kind of idea of like, what does it look like for you to win with your money? And that actually excels the kingdom. And so there's that idea of that. And then year three is, okay, based on what we are good at and who we have, now we're building momentum. And so for me, the entrepreneurial idea is like, I've got to be ready for 3 years of hardship, because I don't build trust in a moment. It's over time. Same thing with a business. You're out of the gate, you're going to have a big, I don't know. So does that kind of make sense? Like,
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I wanted you to share that. And I love that 3 parts, that 3 years, because a lot of people listening to this podcast right now, they really do have a dream to start something.
Yeah.
They don't know how to get started. There's a lot of terror, both financial and non-financial, related to it. One of the greatest is failure. They don't want to be a failure. No one wants to be a failure. But I love that you just shared, year one is margin, maintain margin. That also includes your time, I assume, having margin with your time so you don't leave your family in the dust. Yeah. Then it's the second year's relationships. You find out who they are. So if you're starting a business, that's your customers, that's your suppliers, that's your vendors. And then, of course, momentum. That's, you make it through those first 2 years, you get to momentum. But you can't get to year 2, year 3 without starting with margin. Yeah. I love that.
Well, and I have a sister-in-law who started an at-home business, and year one, she was making things and she's trying to figure out how to make them. And then she talked to my wife, who has also kind of started a business, and she goes, well, do you know about this shipping opportunity? And it lowered the cost of how to ship product. Well, that was based on a relationship. She had to learn how to do her product, but then it was through a mutual relationship that actually expedited and lowered cost. And so it wasn't even in the same industry, and so now year 3, that momentum's going. That's kind of an example, I think.
I love that. And so I just encourage people who are listening to this podcast, you're thinking about starting, you can absolutely get started, but just recognize the fact that it is not going to be instantaneous. The success is not instantaneous for most people. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea if it's not successful immediately. There's so much learning along the way. And so, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, I just shared in the opener, now you have a church that's serving at least 1,500 people. You've got multiple campuses. You've been able to host networks of other churches and other church leaders. You've been able to go speak to other networks. I've had you come to our office before and talk to our team. I look at it and say, during this process of the last decade and a half, one of the names of God, we have Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Rapha, and we have Jehovah Jireh. And Jireh means provider, the God who provides. How have you seen your faith and confidence grow in God as the great Jehovah Jireh, your provider?
Yeah. It's interesting because Jenny and I were just talking about this. And it's never been hard for us to see God as our provider, right? But the newer revelation is he wants to provide beyond my needs. And then the thing that Jenny and I were talking about is like, God actually is providing for us bigger dreams than we thought possible. So not only is God a provider, I think from a financial or from a just making sure that we can eat and sleep like that. Like that's true. But there's the untangible dream that we thought was like, I mean, we didn't even have the thought, let alone now we can pursue that. God provides next steps beyond what you could even see. And I think that's the kind of migration we've made from how is God providing for us to like, whoa, God's providing in such a way we can dream new dreams. We can dream bigger dreams. We can position ourselves to be bigger blessing givers. And so
that's awesome.
Jenny, we were just going on a walk around our block and we were just kind of talking about like, isn't it wild what we're dreaming about now and what we were dreaming about 10 years ago? Well, we didn't have those dreams 10 years ago, but God provided them.
That's incredible. And I think it really speaks to the fact that if you're listening to this podcast today, but you know for a fact you've not been taking the steps you need to take to get your finances under control. You're not preparing a budget every month. You're not addressing debt. You're continuing to get debt. There literally are dreams that you don't even know could be happening in your life yet. And by the way, you're never going to get to know them if you don't get with the program. Because God's not going to reward unfaithfulness. Jump on that.
Yeah, I exclamation point on that. Like I'm so grateful that, a dozen years ago, you entered into the process of getting us on a better path because that better path has been better. It's been better. It's just
and now you're getting to live an entrepreneurial dream. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But one of the things that I always say when I'm coaching someone, and I remember this is in my early days of speaking, I hope people don't hold this against me. And I'm so grateful that God doesn't hold it against us. But one message, no joke. I'm so fired up. I'm just remembering this. I'm red in the face if you're watching on YouTube, but I wanted people to get this so bad because no one should be operating broke. Come on. If you've worked for 20 years, there's no reason you should still be broke other than just continuing dysfunctional financial and relational decisions. And I was so passionate about wanting people to do this that I said, I would get down on my four legs and bark like a dog to get you to do this. And I got down on four legs and barked like a dog. Oh,
yeah.
I didn't do that in the second service. I've never done it again, but I want people to get this. I can't, but here's the thing. That's what a coach is. That's what a counselor is. Mm-hmm. But the person receiving the counsel has to go actually do something. And that's what you and Jenny have done is you've taken the knowledge and you've went and ran with it and you've made it your own. And that's why you've made progress.
Yeah. Let me just kind of add to this. I think there's a desire for many people. They want mentors. They really do. And when you are a little tyke, a little one, you've got big brothers, big sisters, you got YMCA sporting, and you got coaches. The coaches take on the responsibility of chasing the young one. But as you get older, the narrative flips, the script changes, and it's on you to pursue the mentor, you to pursue the coach. And I think a lot of people are like, I just wish someone would care for me. I just wish someone would pursue me. I wish and like, at some point in your young years, there's a flip where no longer are you the pursued, you need to become the pursuer. And then stuff gets activated. And so I think people like, I just wish someone would disciple me as a church word that people throw out. Well, the idea was they got underneath Jesus. They put themselves in proximity to be behind him. And I think that same thing is true with finances. The same thing is true if you want a better marriage. You need to pursue the proximity underneath someone who can lead you.
Wow. So, that's amazing. I almost can just see that being a blog post or a whole nother episode, the podcast of calling it the flip, the flip. And how do you flip from, coaches pursuing you to you finally pursuing coaches in your life? So, we use this phrase all the time called a fully funded life. And it's rung number 9 of the ladder. And it means something different to every single person. So what does the phrase fully funded life mean to you and to Jenny personally?
I like how you said it. It means something different to everyone. For Jenny and I, it has meant something different throughout the seasons. Like at first it was like, how do we go to a place where we're not living paycheck to paycheck? That would be fully funded. And then it moved to like, wouldn't it be great to be out of student debt? Which then happened. And then it was like, what, this one blew our mind. What if we had all of our Christmas money before Christmas? That at one season of our life was like, that would be fully funded. That would be amazing. And so let's attack a plan and have some money for college for our kids, right? Like right now it's let's acquire some oxen. Here's a big hope of ours. What would it look like by age 60 for me? So that's about 15 more years. My salary was no longer a burden on our church, but my wife and I got to pursue dreams to be encouragers, coaches, blessing to other people. What that would require is for us to have other revenue streams and have like no new operating debt or anything like that. And I mean, there's a lot of different variables in that, but right now a fully funded life for us would be to have the things in motion that set us up for at that time frame. And it can be sooner for all I care. That's fine. But really thinking with a 15-year mindset, that's our next fully funded. Because I think for us, we got to the certain rung and we're like, well, why be done?
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly right. So I think that's an excellent point that you're saying here is it is progressive, and it's as your eyes are open, it's like scales fall off your eyes. And I always describe that on the ladder, that as you go up the ladder, you can see farther.
Yeah.
When you climb up that ladder and get on top of the house, you can just see farther. Yeah. And you can see more opportunity, more land, more things to avoid, directions you don't want to go and directions you do want to go. And I love that you say it started with not being paycheck to paycheck. And then it moved from there on. And I always, when I have a live event, I have people check a box that says, which of these words best describes your financial situation? They all start with S. So they're struggling, they're stable, and they're surplus. And people immediately know which one of those categories they're in.
Yeah.
And what I've observed is it is difficult to move from one to the next. In fact, when I talk to people struggling, surplus is a pipe dream. It's way over there. I'm thinking their goal is to get to stability. Mm-hmm. And it's only after you achieve a level of stable for a period of time that you even begin to thinking about surplus. So, and you've got to have a major mindset shift, a way that you manage money shift. And what I've noticed is the worries about money change. When you're struggling, you're praying, Lord, can I have some money? When you're in surplus, you're like, Lord, prevent me from losing this money. But I think I had the mistaken belief that as I started out, that, man, when I get surplus, I'm going to have no money problems anymore. Just no more. And that's just not true, is it?
No, you got to stay on it. And I think, we got teenagers now.
Yeah.
There is a whole different financial reality. So I've got this fully funded, but I also got like another round of braces coming and another round of braces coming and a 16-year-old and another 16-year-old and another, like it just keeps coming, and I actually was driving today and I was like, oh my goodness, it's not crazy for 1, 2, 3, or even 4 of my children to be married in the next 15 years. Like that's actually probable. Like,
and somebody will be calling you grandpa.
What?
Get fired up.
Yeah.
So thinking and looking back over your financial journey, how has it affected your life, your relationships with people, and your marriage? It's a big question, I know.
Yeah. I'll start with marriage. I think money was a hot topic for my wife and I, just because of our values coming into the marriage. I grew up in like, only take care of the bare essentials. She grew up, get the best of the best and it will last longer. And so there was a whole kind of 3 to 4 years of just missing, right? Like she's like, oh, I really like this picture. It would be great in our living room. And I'm like, our walls can stay blank. And so anytime she would like point out something she would like, I would hurt her because I would say, we don't need it. And it felt like I was devaluing her relationship with God because there might have been a thing attached. And for her, beauty and hospitality and relationship was an environment is really big in steering her walk with the Lord. And for me, I'm like, let's give it all the way to the missionaries, right? And so the early on battle, it actually took over a decade for that wound to heal.
Wow.
Where she was afraid to bring up something she liked because I would interpret she's going to go get it, even though that's not how she operated. So I think all marriages struggle like with, I tell people, you're going to trip over these 5 hurdles: communication, your in-laws, money, sex, and kids. These are the 5 hurdles. And my wife and I think God graced us by tripping over all 5 of them really hard. And we had to figure them out. And so the money one really started to pick up steam when you proposed to us something that both felt winnable. So if she has some ideas of what she wants to get for our home, like we monthly had this growing amount in known upcoming that allowed her to feel secure in making a purchase without being judged, right? And I had to grow in that as well. But it was just like, okay, so we're finding things that work. We're finding ways to talk about money. Like I felt no shame in eating out all the time, to which she would be like, well, why is that money okay to spend, but not this money, and so honestly, we really had to work on that. Now it's exciting for us to talk about like our I should say this, talking about the budget is still annoying. All these years later, we still do it, and it's still like, ugh. But talking about the dreams is more fun because the budget has set them up.
Wow, that's great.
I think when talking with friends, like I actually sit my staff down. I'm like, hey, can I help you address, like, ask me money questions. I know what you make. You're my staff. Like, so like, don't be embarrassed. What's the game plan? And so I've become more forward, whereas before I felt like, well, the church only talks about money. The church only talks about money. Now I'm kind of just like, the church wants to be a blessing to you. The church wants to educate you. The church wants to help you. And so that is actually, I think, really advanced people's perspective on what used to be, stay away. Now it's like, man, I got to get into this. And we have found so many people energized because of their own personal victories.
That's exciting. And I just think it's so powerful. You know, the local school's not going to teach it. The colleges aren't going to teach it. They're going to teach them how to make it, maybe, but they're not going to teach them what to do with it once they get it. And today I just did an experiment. I was on Instagram and seeing how many ads. I saw a statistic that said in the last year, it's from Forbes magazine article, that the average person in America spent 1,300 hours consuming media. A full-time job is 2,000 hours in a year. So 65% of a full-time job, we consume media.
Yeah.
And watch this. So I got on Instagram. The second post was an ad. The 6th post, 10th post, and 14th post, all of them were ads. And all this stuff is saying you'll only be happy when you buy this thing, when you get this thing, this airbrushed world, this perfect world. And that it's same on Snapchat, same on Facebook, same on TikTok, and it is affecting relationships. In fact, I heard today that China has banned kids under age 18 from being on media, on video games.
Except for a weekend.
For 1 hour a day during the week. And it was down to 1 hour a day. Now they banned it on the weekdays, and it's 3 hours on the weekends. And they are onto something. They have figured something out. And I think it's amazing. You know, if you focus as much time as you spend watching a Netflix show that you binge watch on your money, it's going to change your life. It'll change your relationships. And that's what you've experienced in your life. So as we wrap it up,
I got to say that my daughter is in school and is in a financial learning class. And she said they're teaching us how to keep a credit card balance low. So even when they're teaching you the wrong stuff.
Yikes. Well, zero is low. So zero, let's hope it's zero. That's amazing. So let's do these. These will kind of be like lightning round stuff. So if you could share one financial tool with others, whether it's on our website or not, what would it be? What's the one big financial tool that you would want others to know about?
Known upcoming expenses. I mean, it is a game changer.
That's awesome.
That, Do it.
And we'll provide a link in the show notes so you can download that. It's free. And if you could share one financial tip with others, what would it be?
I think give, then save. That's the line item as you're putting your budget together. Like, I really do believe that if we are obedient in the first and then spend a savings, that language was so huge for me. Savings isn't leftover. It is one of the line items that I'm spending to. I think that's a huge tip. I think it is huge. The margin.
I mean, it is absolutely huge. I appreciate you sharing it. So as we wrap it up, what's next for the Marty? I think she refers to as Martin, I believe, the Martin and Jenny show.
Martin.
What's next? Mart. That's right.
Yeah.
What's
so
next?
I think there's both like the real and then the hope. So the real is I do have braces coming up. I do have a 16-year-old coming up. There's these, and those braces ain't cheap. But then my wife and I, we're in a position right now. She's got a business going, and we're dreaming about these, like acquiring a property that like a multiplex, kind of like a duplex or beyond, and so that's what we've been working on the last 6 weeks, and it's crazy because when we first met, I had $40,000-$60,000 of student loans, and here we are setting aside money to go pursue a future income property. So that's what's next for us.
That's awesome. I love it. And so I really do appreciate your joining us today. Any last words that you wanted to share with everybody?
Stay vigilant in learning. Don't assume like you've got it. Like I still listen today because there's new things all the time. And so I would just say, if you want to win with your money, keep learning.
Hey, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. And as we wrap up the podcast, I do encourage you, if you're watching on YouTube, click on the subscribe button, leave a comment. Is there something particularly that helped you today? Is there something you wanted to share in the conversation? And also you can share it on your social media platform. It's the greatest compliment you could ever give us, is to share it with your friends and your family. And so we'll see you next Monday. And as always, we like to end it by saying it is Monday. You have a whole week to do something to move yourself forward, make it a profitable one. Get fired up.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.